This next section talks about the different types of muscle contractions. Now, if you go on to take advanced A&P, you're going to learn a lot more detail about how the nerve actually stimulates, like through the release of acetylcholine, and how that binds to receptors on the sarcolemma of the muscle cell, and how that triggers an internal release of calcium, and what calcium does to the tropomyosin troponin complex that allows the myosin heads to stick to the muscle tissue. For this class, we're not going to go into that much detail, but one of the competencies talks about describing the different types of muscle fibers and how they're going to contract differently, and then talking a little bit about the different types of contractions. So in general, if we kind of go back to this picture, in order to get this thing to contract, calcium comes in, and calcium is going to bind to this complex, and that allows for the certain component of the thin filaments, the actin, to move out of the way, so it leaves the binding sites available for myosin. So if you don't have calcium flooding the muscle, you're not going to have a muscle contraction. The myosin heads will never be able to bind to the actin. So calcium is necessary to get this to contract, and if you want the muscle to stop contracting, you suck back up all the calcium, and that's how we stop our muscle contraction. We eliminate the calcium from our muscle tissue. Now the calcium doesn't just go away, it's stored inside of the muscle tissue, but we eliminate it from this contractile unit. So if calcium is present, the muscle can contract. If we eliminate calcium, the muscle can no longer contract. So keeping that in mind will help you kind of visualize what's going on with these different types of contractions. First of all, different types of muscle fibers and how they relate to performance. The two major types of muscle fibers are the slow twitch muscle fibers and fast twitch muscle fibers. A slow twitch muscle fiber uses oxygen for fuel and provides continuous energy. It offers extended muscle contraction. It fires slowly, has high endurance, and this is great for marathon runners. So if you need endurance, you're going to stimulate these slow twitch muscle fibers. A fast twitch muscle fiber uses anaerobic metabolism for fuel. It provides short bursts of speed, fires rapidly, and fatigues more quickly, and this is great for sprinters. Most muscles have a combination of both types of fibers. But if you're training your body in a particular way, your muscle may develop more of one type of muscle fiber than the other. Or the one type of muscle fiber may become a little bit larger than the other. So we have the fast twitch. If you're going to do like bodybuilding and you're going to maintain a contraction for a short period of time, or like it says, you're going to be a sprinter, then you use the fast twitch. Well, slow twitch, that's more for like endurance. So a twitch contraction is a quick jerk of a muscle that is produced as a result of a single brief threshold stimulus. So we've got that sudden release of calcium, which moves the complex on actin in order to allow for the myosin heads to bind. A typical twitch contraction has three phases: the latent phase, the contraction phase, and a relaxation phase. During the latent phase, the stimulus is applied and calcium is going to start building up inside of that contractile unit. During the contraction phase, you're going to actually have contraction of the muscle. Following that, the calcium is going to be sucked back up out of the contractile unit, and that's going to allow the muscle to relax. During TREP, this is the staircase phenomenon, gradual step-like increase in the strength of contraction, which is seen in a series of twitch contractions that occur 1 second apart. Eventually, the muscle responds with less forceful contractions, and the relaxation phase becomes shorter. If the relaxation phase disappears completely, a contracture occurs, and a contracture is basically a continuous contraction of the muscle. So, if we compare twitch versus TREP, so twitch, you have one stimulation, and one influx of calcium, and that's going to cause the muscle to contract and then relax. During TREP, you're going to actually hold a contraction. So while you're holding contractions, you're releasing calcium at particular bursts. And each time, it kind of takes longer for the muscle to relax. So you don't have entire relaxation over a period of time. Eventually, if these become, close enough, then you're going to have continuous contraction of the muscle. And then we get into tetanus contractions. So incomplete tetanus is when you have wave stimulation. So you have a closer firing of these influxes of calcium. And that influx of calcium, remember, is stimulated by a nerve impulse, by a release of acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction. So now you're going to have this wave of muscle contraction, but you're still going to have bouts of relaxation. It's just the relaxation is a little bit less in between. So at this point, the muscle may be shaking. So you may be holding something really heavy, and you're having this continuous stimulation happening, but you also have some relaxation happening. During complete tetanus, the stimulations are so close together that you have complete contraction and continuous contraction of the muscle. So if we look at twitch and tetanus, with a twitch, you have one release of calcium, and when the calcium goes away, the muscle's going to relax. With tetanus, you have wave-like releases of calcium. So you're having stimuli that are going to produce this kind of continuous flow of calcium. Anytime that you have calcium inside of the muscle contractile unit, you're going to be able to contract. So in tetanus, this continuous release of calcium leads to a continuous contraction of the muscle. Muscle contractions, in addition to being classified as a twitch or TREP or tetanus, can be classified as isotonic and isometric. Isotonic is when the tone or tension in a muscle remains the same, but the length of the muscle changes. So if you think about picking up a book, the book has a constant weight. And if you're picking up the book and you're bending your elbow in order to do this, you're applying a constant amount of tone or tension in the muscle as you're decreasing the length of the muscle. So the length of the muscle is changing, but the tone or tension of the muscle is remaining constant. So isotonic, same tone, different muscle fiber length. Isometric is a contraction in which muscle length remains the same while muscle tension increases. If you go outside and try to pick up your car, it's going to be very difficult for you to pick up a car. That's going to produce an isometric contraction. So you're going to put your hands on the bottom side of the car and you're going to push up, and that car is not going to move. And you're going to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing and increasing the tension that you're applying, but the length of the muscle is not going to change because you're not actually going to be successful in lifting up the car. So it's a contraction in which the muscle length remains the same, but the muscle tension increases. Isometric, similar measure. So we're having a similar length, but the tension is increasing. And this just shows a picture of isotonic and isometric. So the example that they give of isotonic is lifting up a weight. The example that they're giving of isometric is when you're holding onto a bar. That bar is not going to move, but you can increase the tension on the muscle. So hopefully you were able to follow along with many of those different types of contractions. I'm not going to ask you many questions on the exam or quiz about the different types of muscle contractions, but it is a competency. We went through it, and this is going to be greatly expanded on if you go on to take advanced AMP.